All right, welcome to Smash the Numbers. This is my new channel. I have been posting for a little while here. My name is Farris Khan. Been posting for since the beginning of the season, really. Very pleased to welcome. I'm going to call him Ann Arbor Broadcasting legend, Dennis Fithian. I could say I grew up listening to Dennis Fithian, but that wouldn't be true because I was already grown up when I was listening to Dennis Fithian. We're about the same age, I think. So, but it is great to be in touch with someone who I listen to on the radio and obviously listen to now with his podcast as well. So thank you, Dennis, for joining me today. I will be creating segments of this broadcast, which I will post over the next several days leading up to USC. You know, one of the things that I am very excited about is that unlike last year, Michigan is not, there is a roller coaster that we're already on. There are not easy, these games are not easy that we're in the middle of. There's tension, there's drama, and all of that happens even when we're playing a team like Arkansas State. So Dennis, welcome. We'd love to get your thoughts first of all, if you could share with the audience, I'll put a link into this broadcast, but share with the audience where people can reach you and also, what you think of the season so far.
Yeah, well, first of all, congratulations on getting this podcast going, and I'm looking forward to seeing what you do with it. And it's a lot of fun covering Michigan and talking about Michigan. Yeah, I think the easiest way to follow me, if you're on Twitter, at Dennis Fithian. I should have had it just says Dennis up there. At Dennis Fithian. Everything that I do there usually gets put somehow through Twitter, and I go through there. So if you like what you hear, check that out. So far for Michigan, it has been in some ways kind of predictable with the offense and how things have. I thought that all off season that it was going to take some time with a new quarterback and an offensive line and so many different players that they had to replace on offense, and the coaches, that it was going to take some time on offense to get up to speed. But the surprise has been the defense, and I thought that they would really be able to lean on that. And so they have had both of these kind of working at the times against what you thought, and that's it added up to where they're sitting here with a kind of a big giant question mark after the non-conference season. The biggest, I wish that this isn't anything analytics or anything else. It's just something that I keep thinking is that I wish last year's team could have played this year's schedule, and then this year's team could have played last year's schedule. We'd be sitting here, I'm pretty sure 3-0 right now, getting ready to talk about Michigan opening up the season against Rutgers and Nebraska if it was last year's schedule, and getting time to, and people would feel way differently about it. Of course, they don't have that luxury, and so here we are.
Yeah. There was no drama in the first half of last year's schedule. I mean, I guess there was a little bit with the game that JJ threw 3 interceptions, Bowling Green, I believe, but it didn't. It wasn't really it really wasn't a season until really kind of almost 2/3 through the year. Obviously there was all the off field situations and things like that. But the first game after Connor Stallions left, you figured there'd be some drama, and Michigan beat Michigan State 49-0. After that game, and you really have to wait for the Penn State game for things to get truly interesting, right? So, I think with that, I'm gonna kind of go over a couple things here. Let's talk USC for a second, and let's talk about the line for the game. I think we we're thinking that perhaps, or at least this is my thought, that Michigan had 3 tough games on its schedule: the Texas game, the Oregon game, and the OSU game. And if they went even 1-2 in those 3 games, they'd have a good shot of the playoffs, because presumably they would have a decent chance to run the table with all of the other games. Okay, so that was even 10 days ago. Maybe I was thinking that. I'd be curious what you thought back then. But the line for this game went from Michigan being favored by 9.5 points to actually USC being favored by 5.5 points. I'm just curious what you think. Have you ever seen that? And kind of what do you think of that? In a sense, we've held serve, don't you think? I mean, we've held serve in terms of the game we were supposed to lose, Texas, we lost, and the 2 other games that we were supposed to win, we won. Maybe not in the way that we were expecting, but that dramatic of a shift. What do you think of that, Dennis?
Well, I think that people have paid attention to what has gone on here. Lincoln Riley, even dating back to Oklahoma, his teams have always been fabulous offensively. But when you watched them play defense back when they were in Norman, they were terrible defensively. A couple times, even when they made the playoffs, people were like, man, this team doesn't deserve to be in the playoffs. They're just all offense. And then USC, when he went there, that's what it looked like. They terrible defensively. Well, then we watch them play against LSU. It looks to be, certainly a program that's usually in the top 25, and it's early in the season. But their defense, they changed things up, and they looked aggressive, and they looked like they could tackle, and they were in position. And it was totally different from anything that you've seen from USC. I was probably like everyone else laughing at USC. Wait till they have to come into Michigan. Oh, all those years. My dad saying, no, USC gets the home cooking. Michigan has to go out and play them in the Rose Bowl. It's a big deal. Well, so people have been waiting for this to get them in Ann Arbor. And then watching a team that's just a one-sided offensive team, they weren't going to be able to stop Michigan when they smashed them with their run game. But what we have seen is that USC looks formidable on that side to just, cut it there. And then watching Michigan here, true enough, the narrative, and I was right there with you. They win 1 out of those 3 tough games, Texas and Oregon and Ohio State, and take care of business. They're going to be in the college football playoff. But the thing is that Michigan stumbled out of the gate with Sharon Moore. I would just chalk it up to being indecisive. They sit right now on Monday. A lot of people were shocked that Sharon Moore named Alex Orji the quarterback. Well, he should have done this a month ago when they were heading into the first week. They, in a lot of ways, it depends how you look at it, but they have punted on a month's worth of the scheme that they would work on with Alex Orji. It's going to be predominantly a running quarterback for Michigan. And they've had to split at least, with Davis Warren, they've at least had to split the starting snaps in terms of game week. So that's put them behind the 8 ball. And so here they are. And so now, and so everybody's watched this. And, Davis Warren, the game's too fast for him. That's what I saw, and I think everybody else has seen in the first 3 games. He's doesn't look like a legitimate starting quarterback. Certainly in the Big Ten, definitely not at Michigan if you want to be a playoff team. So they have, because of the indecisiveness, they've really put themselves in a pickle here. And now they're starting a quarterback that should have had a month's worth of work. And now he's just going to have 5 days to get ready to play a USC team that looks totally different than what we thought they were going to be. So that's it in a nutshell. And, Jim Harbaugh, he was great at a lot of things, but he was really good he was always standing by his quarterback. You always see him, and I saw him with Justin Herbert, the quarterback of the Chargers. He's over there on the sideline, smashing his shoulder pads and punching. Man, it's all about getting that quarterback the confidence. You got to have that. And Michigan, with what they have with these 2 quarterbacks, it's hard to have confidence with what has gone on now. And I think Monday, normally you wouldn't say anything if you're Sharon Moore, because why? Why would you say anything when you at least have that one card to play? Like, hey, are they going to play Warren? They're going to play Orji. Even if they thought it was going to be Orji, he did that to try to put some confidence with Alex Orji, who we know the couple of times that he's thrown the ball in these 3 games, the overshot of the third series that he was in there when he threw the bomb, and some Michigan fans said, "Oh, they could have ended up if the receiver would have kept running." I mean, I don't think Tyreek Hill at full blast would have run under that ball. That wasn't a very good throw. And the other one, you think of, and he's had 2 nice dump off passes for touchdowns, but the other one that he buried in the dirt, you're watching this and you're like, is this guy a Big Ten quarterback? So, this is a long answer, but it doesn't look like Michigan has a formidable or serviceable quarterback. And then they've got a lot of other questions. So I go back to it being indecisive and then a lack of confidence with the quarterback. And I think they've put themselves behind the sticks where you don't want to be heading into this game against USC, Farris.
Yeah. And Aaron, really appreciate you chiming in here. It's awesome that we're recording this and we we do have a live comment, so that's cool. So, I mean, the way I'm interpreting this is, do we think that the USC defense, we're familiar with it, and that's a positive? Is it sort of like playing against ourselves potentially? At least the way I interpret that question. Go ahead.
Well, the thing about the Michigan defense, not the Michigan defense from last year. I mean, that's hopefully, I don't think they're going to be that good, but they are better. I mean, they hired a defensive coordinator. They took him from UCLA. He's John Harbaugh. He's got some links to him. So, he's installed a defense, and he's got these guys, instead of always slanting and leaning, they're playing straight ahead, and they're just playing physical ball. So they're really, and it's always been the thing, and we'll talk about Lincoln Riley and what he's been able to do on offense. I mean, there's never been anybody that said, "Oh, Lincoln Riley." It's always been, can you get a serviceable defense? Well, they were more than serviceable against LSU. So that's made them really scary. That's why the line has moved, and they've got this defensive end, number 6. He's pretty good. Listening to Donovan Edwards on Monday at his press conference, he talked about these safeties come downhill from what he's seen, pretty good tacklers. And from what I saw against LSU, that was the thing, that they looked like they weren't just going to be this patty cake defense, this Southern Cal team that was coming up like the Beach Boys, thinking that they were going to be able to stop Michigan. So not last year's defense, but, just a formidable group. And so I wouldn't compare them like to last year's defense and Michigan's defense. I'm not sure. I don't know. They don't have a calling card right now. It's really been a shock. I mean, again, the offensive stuff, I understand. The defensive issues, I'm more perplexed about. But I when you have most, and we're familiar with a lot of the players, well, what do? You go to the coaching staff, which is all new defensively, and then certainly Wink Martindale. He's not running the same thing that they ran the last 3 years. I mean, you can say that this is what they're doing in a 3-4 or whatever else, but Michigan's blitz rate was, I don't know, in the 40s last year in the country, and now it's top 5. I mean, Wink Martindale's blitzing all the time. Like, people said, well, I hope he doesn't, blitz all. Well, he's blitzing a lot, and it's changed Michigan's identity on that side of the ball. All of that being said, I'm going to, again, cut this short. Like, I'm saying a lot of this, like, oh, no, the offense is bad, the defense is bad. All these things aren't lining up for Michigan. They come out and play a solid game, and they beat USC. They're right back on track, and you're feeling a lot different about all this. But heading in, there's a lot of red flags, but they can chop those red flags down with a great showing on Saturday.
Yeah. And I think we have a 1-game season, is what I would say. Right? Agreed. So with that, I'm going to give kind of a little bit of a report card of what I think has happened, and I'm not going to get into the details. I actually recorded a separate session where I kind of go through these details. which is basically in an Excel spreadsheet. And Dennis, I think when we were talking about before the show, I want to make this, I want to be able to distill this in terms of, what are the 2 or 3 things that we should really be looking at in terms of numbers that matter. And when I started looking at, I have this big spreadsheet with, all of the defensive numbers. And when you look at that, you realize that really, we're allowing a ton of first downs per game. That's one of the indicators that's looking pretty bad. We are not getting fumbles. That's another piece. The actual completion percentage against is relatively high, as well. Are these all kind of fixable things? I tend to think yes, but I will also say your thoughts on Wink Martindale. There's some issues there because I don't know if he thinks this is a pro offense and the personnel that he has can handle things in a different way. The fear originally was this Don Brown 2.0. I don't know if you think that kind of thing or not, but maybe the way I'm thinking of it is, does he think that these players are actually better than they are because he's thinking of them of what a pro can do versus a college player?
Yeah, I think that last part is the one I would go with. He spent the majority of his coaching career in the pros as a defensive coordinator, and there's a lot of similarity now. It was really a stark contrast. If we were going back 5 years ago, you say, oh, there's going to be an adjustment period if you have a college guy going to the pros or vice versa. But, there's a lot of carryover now when it comes to both games in a lot of different ways, even paying the money and everything else. But I think that there's an adjustment period with Wink Martindale, and it's tough. It's tough when a guy has made it to the position that he has. And, I would say if I was sitting down with Wink Martindale, like, Wink, why don't you just go with what Jesse Minter was doing? Why don't you just pretty much copy that and then, tweak a little things instead of coming in saying, hey, this is the way I think it should be, and trying to force that in. And it hasn't worked so far. Now, again, proof's going to be coming up on Saturday where, this is, I don't know, what did you call it? A 1-game season? So, okay, I'll throw it out there. This is a referendum game for Wink Martindale in his Michigan career. And the thing is, Steve Sarkisian is a tremendous offensive mind. He can scheme up things. And you saw that with Texas. And yeah, they got a, great quarterback. And they did a good job getting wide receivers in the portal. The tight end looked like he's going to be great. But you could see the scheme. You could see him right when it was a zone stressing Michigan's defense. And you saw the confusion and Michigan not being able to communicate. And it led to some easy scores for Texas. And the thing about Lincoln Riley coming in, Moss Miller, no, he's not Quinn Ewers, but they've got a hell of a wide receiver in Branch, and they've got a lot of speed, and they brought a nice running back in from the transfer portal. Lincoln Riley can scheme up as good or better than Sark. So to me, that makes me nervous about Michigan's defense. And, even Arkansas State, I know, you look at the numbers, you say, oh, well, Michigan did pretty good against Arkansas State. They did against the run, but the third down completion is a little bit disturbing, and it just continued to be one of these things. You completely flip it. All of those things that you talked about, what Michigan was so good at last year, not committing penalties, getting turnovers, getting, scores by your defense, and that's all been reversed. And a lot of that, you can chalk up to, you would say, well, there's a lot of different personnel, and offensively, yeah, those penalties, but defensively, you don't really have that. Now, Phil Steele does college football. He does a college football magazine. He's got a service. He's been doing it for 30 years. I always have been interested in Phil Steele, but Phil always has talked about from year to year, the turnover margin. It's something that's not sustainable. There's a lot of luck involved in it. Now you'd say, well, Michigan had great players, and so that's why they're getting a lot of turnovers. And I tend to think that too. But it's still, when you look at the data, 25 years, 30 years, there isn't a great amount of carryover when it comes, even if you have the same personnel when it comes to turnover margin. So what question am I getting at here again? I know.
Yeah, well, we're talking through the defense and kind of like what you think the weaknesses potentially are.
Too much blitzing, and these guys aren't comfortable in it. I could tell when a defense looks like you can't be thinking. They've had communication issues. They've said that themselves. Last year, when you watch these guys, you could see them in the secondary, whatever they were doing. They're saying all these different things, and man, they were on top of it. Yeah, they got beat, but it didn't seem like because they were out of position. They got beat because somebody else made a play. This year, it looks like they're getting beat by teams scheming them up, and then them just not being familiar, like they're running a completely different scheme, which it looks like they are. Makari Page back in the spring, he drew a lot of laughs when he said, "Hey, what's Wink's defense like? Compared to Minter?" He said, "Oh, it's completely different," and everybody laughed, like, "Oh, yeah, this is the guy that created this defense." Well, this doesn't look anything like the scheme that Michigan was running last year. They're blitz heavy, and they've got Mason Graham. They're moving him on the outside. They're moving different guys around, and so I think that's it. It just looks like they're adjusting to a new defensive staff and a new defensive coordinator and a new scheme. That's what it looks like.
So I think the blitz rate was like 40% or something. I know you said it was top 5 in college football, right? The blitz
That's what
rate.
I saw. Yeah.
Yeah. So where do we need to be? What do you think we should do? Should we get it back to where it was under Minter then?
Well, I'll go back. I think that if I am Wink and I am confident in my ability to be a defensive coordinator in the NFL, and I have risen to this status, I am going to go with what I think is going to, what brought me there. It's like, it's trying to tell Major League Baseball hitters that made it all the way through and they made it to the show and, they hit 300 and then they'll get in a funk. And then you want to say, hey, why don't you adjust, your swing or something? And I'm like, I'm going to go with what I'm confident in. I would suggest that Wink at this point, the time to think about staying and going with the same thing was in the spring, heading into spring ball, when they had all their conversations. They were in the meeting rooms and they talked about how they wanted to coordinate and attack this year on defense. He's gone the entire spring, trying to teach them what his foundation and his pillars. And now here we are, same thing. We're a month into the season. You can't abort it heading into USC. He's got to stay the same. So it's going to be a heavy blitz package. And you hope that the communication issues that these guys, you can get better during the season. It doesn't mean that they're always going to look, I don't want to say look lost, but, have some issues when it comes down to that. So, and I think that's where we're at.
All right. Well, I'm going to pivot to offense for a second. And then when we talk about the offensive side of the ball, to me, the thing that stands out the most is the interceptions per game. So we are, there's some other factors here. I'm just kind of showing, let me just go back and there's a lot of factors I was looking at, but it's about the turnovers. What you're saying about Phil Steele is discouraging. What he says, that there's so much randomness to it. I think we have to at least hope that with a quarterback change, we're going to be a little bit more conservative. I did notice that we're passing a lot more than we did last year. Last year we passed 61%. We ran 61%. This year we're pretty close to 50-50. Just a thought in terms of other teams in 2023. Alabama ran 63%. So we ran 61% of the time. Alabama, out of the high-flying SEC, ran 63% of the time. We've actually been pretty pass heavy. We're in the 50s, in terms, almost 50-50 in terms of running and passing, believe it or not. So I don't know what you think about I mean, with the quarterback change, do we try to replicate what Alabama did and try to make Orji some level of a Milroe, not at his level probably, but 80% of a Jalen Milroe?
Yeah, I think that's what we're talking about here. You do have a new offensive coordinator in Kirk Campbell, and you also have a brand new offensive line in their uh, rotating the center position instead of that goes back to the indecisiveness and the right tackle. Before we go, you can say, well, the quarterback issues, they got to get better production out of the right tackle, or what are we talking about? Are they even going to have a chance against USC? Those are some really surprising things. But yeah, they've thrown the ball so much that Texas game was over so quick that they had to, and they were down, so they were going to throw a little bit more. And Davis Warren can throw the ball, so they had to abandon the run a little bit. But what we know about Alex Orji, I would think that they would be running even more than 65% of the time. You got to get him comfortable. You have to get some confidence with him, and you can only throw so many safe passes. If Orji is going to push the ball down the field and he overshoots someone or buries one on the ground, it's not only going to just kill the confidence in the crowd, that's going to kill his other confidence. So watching, I think it's going to be 80% running on Saturday against USC, maybe even more. Now, if they get down, then, we're going to have to see what, I don't know how far, 14 points or something. Then, of course, Orji's going to have to put it up in the air. But I think if what's going to bode well for Michigan and what they're going to try to do is they're going to try to run the ball 80-90% of the time with Alex Orji as the quarterback. That's what I think is going to happen. And I think you can be Sharon Moore and you can be a Michigan fan and you can say USC is a bunch of pretty boys that just their offense and their defense. Sure, we saw what they did against LSU, but this is the Midwest and this is smash. And Michigan has hung their hat the last 3 years on being able to run the ball and come off the ball with an offensive line and smash you. That's what Michigan's going to do in this game. So a 90% run rate is what I think they're going to go with against USC.
So, I mean, just one quick point, and then we'll kind of jump to this topic as well. I think, if we're looking at what Michigan did last year, what Alabama did last year, and what Michigan could do this year, I guess we're talking about kind of like what we did in the Penn State game.
Right.
Perhaps we're trying to replicate that for an entire game. Everybody knows what's coming, but we still are able to execute. Do you think that might happen in a scenario where we have Mullings in there, we have Donovan Edwards in there, we have Orji in there at the same time, and maybe we're we have, I don't think the playbook changes, but maybe we're using different plays of the playbook. Maybe that's a better way to say it. And we are running, but we're actually trying to be as creative as possible with running. And maybe some of the running is actually, a 3-yard pass kind of scenario or something to that effect. Is that what might be in the cards as well?
Yeah, easy passes for Alex Orji if he's going to throw it. I wouldn't be surprised if they broke out Donovan Edwards on a pass here. He might throw as many passes as Orji, get him in there. I go back and look to not the Penn State game. Sure, they ran 32 times, but even back in 21 when they won and they ran the ball with Hassan Haskins when they needed that drive 7 straight times, and then they hit Eric All in a little drag and he went for a touchdown. I think about this year, that first game against Fresno, when Fresno finally scored the touchdown. Michigan came out. They ran the ball every time before they finally came out, and Warren was able to hit Colston Loveland for a touchdown. That's what they're going to try to do. It is going to be trying to shove it down their throat. And really, it's not just because that's what Orji does and he needs the confidence. I think this is their best route to victory. Their best players, and certainly Loveland would be there. We don't know what his status is going to be. And, I think you like Klein, but what you're talking about with Orji is you're not going to be taking deep shots with him. They're coming out and they're saying, this is what we're going to do. We got Khalil Mullings and we've got Donovan Edwards, and we're playing smash. We're lining up. We're going to bring in an extra offensive tackle and Gentry, and we're going to run the ball. And we're going to continue to do that. Now, the thing can change is if USC gets up but as long as Michigan is within striking distance, I think you're going to see a 1970s type approach with the Wolverines on Saturday.
All right. I mean, I think, maybe I can pivot a little bit to some of the numbers that you might be looking for. I think, we had 2 interceptions per game on average in that first 3 games. Our completion percentage is actually relatively high. I think we were in the 60s in terms of completion percentage, but lots of really short passes, that sort of thing. The percentage of running plays, you already said 80 or 90%. What do you think? I mean, do you think Alex Orji, I'll put it this way. Do you think Alex Orji should, I mean, I know he had that one long ball, maybe we should throw it up and have our receivers flop or something and try to get a pass interference like they're soccer players. I don't know. What do you think of that kind of, at least keep the defense honest to a certain degree by at least trying to throw it long? Or do you
think the drawback there is if he chucks one down there and it looks like it did on that one that he overshot, was it Fred Moore that he if he overshoots the receiver, it's going to drain his confidence. And so no, I don't think. I mean, there's going to be some, can they scheme up a couple, whatever he does the best, so he can get his feet set and he can launch a ball downfield, but he can do that. But if he's overshooting the guy by 5 yards, then that only makes USC feel like they're stronger. So I wouldn't mess around with that. I think you're going to see some wide receiver screens. I have to see if he can throw the ball. I don't know. I don't feel confident now. I know that they've seen him in practice, and Sharon Moore on Monday said, look, he's done it in the spring. He's done it in the fall, talking about Orji being able to be involved in the passing game. So, but I'm going to have to see a little bit of that. But I think it's all going to be real safe stuff on Saturday. They got to think about his confidence, and the best path for Michigan to win is going to be just churning it out on the ground. One thing about Davis Warren would be interesting if he wasn't pressured and he could just stand in the pocket, man, he could just sit back there. He was throwing some darts. He threw some tremendous passes. The one on the opposite hash to Fred Moore seemed like he had some chemistry with him. He hit Klein down the field. Of course, he was peppering Colston Level in all 3 games. He looked pretty good there. If you give him a clean pocket and he can sit there, he's a pretty good quarterback. The thing is when you got to move your feet and then you got to be able to take care of the ball. That's where he fell apart. That's where the game was too fast for him. And it's like that for a lot of quarterbacks, especially ones that are getting involved in a big-time game like he was against Texas. But then you had last week, you got to rely on your fundamentals as a quarterback. It's great. I know a lot of that's what the young quarterbacks now want to do. They want to throw off the back of their feet. They want to sidearm. They want to run, throw it back against the green. You got to accomplish the fundamentals before you start going all Patrick Mahomes or J.J. McCarthy. And I think that was the thing with Warren when it came down to the turnovers. Great in a clean pocket. You can just sit there, but you get him moved off a little bit. And then, that deteriorated for him. Yeah.
So, let's say, they're designed rollout kind of plays for Orji. Does that make is it our offensive line, or is it the quarterback that can't, maybe move in the pocket as well as you'd like with respect to Warren? And one way to kind of combat that, I suppose, is to have Orji start to go one way or another. Maybe he has 2 choices, maybe 3 at the top. And it's basically passing in the same direction or running. And, maybe that's the way to kind of overcome some of what people might think of as offensive issues, offensive line issues. I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, I haven't seen him. I haven't seen him in a real game do anything passing the ball except those 2 nice touchdown passes he had. He rolled out. He had to put nice little touch, a little 5-yard dump off passes. Donovan Edwards in the first game And then what was it, the Hogan Hansen last game? He looked really good, and that shouldn't be just cast aside. That takes some touch. That you have to be able to be deft to deliver that. Some people say those are some of the toughest passes to throw, and you have to put the touch on that, like he did there. I go back to the spring game and watch some of the throws. Like he came right out of the gate, and he was a little shaky in the spring game, but he delivered some 15-yard outs, standing in the pocket. To be a quarterback, we can start talking about rolling the pocket, offensive line. He's going to have some measure of protection, but to be a quarterback and to do anything at any level, you have to be able to stand in the pocket and deliver the football downfield. He did a little bit of that in the spring game, like I said, with those 15-yard outs. That's what I think that they'll give him, some nice easy ones there. They will. I mean, it's so predictable where the first pass that he's going to throw is going to be a 10-yard screen to Samaj Morgan or to Tyler Morris. And then whoever's calling the game is going to say, yeah, that's to give him a nice, easy one to get his confidence going. They all do that. That's what we're going to see. But then it's going to be, hey, when he has to deliver the ball in the pocket, I think that, I don't want to make it go overboard. So I'll put the first couple, at least the first, 2 or 3 passes, he needs to, it's going to be real important for him, not the one that he just swings out for a little, smoke screen or something. When he's delivering the ball down the field, the first 2 or 3, it's really important that he has some success there. Again, if he's overshooting or he doesn't look, the groans from the crowd, that's going to work on his confidence. And then that's going to turn against him. And then just his overall confidence anyways, if he wasn't, didn't have 1 million people watching him and 110,000 in the stands. Having some early success for him is going to be huge in this one.
Yeah, and I can't remember if you were talking with Scar or just talking on your own, but it was you did mention kind of Alex Orji's you kind of talked about Alex Orji kind of announcing that he's the quarterback at the beginning of the week versus keeping it a secret. Do you think that there's any real benefit, or do you think it was a negative that they didn't keep it a secret and reveal that just before or just the first series of the game?
Yeah, I thought it should have been done again the week before they played Fresno State. So this was a month late in doing this. The problem is that with Alex Orji, you're running a almost completely different offense that you're going to do with Davis Warren, and that's hurting the quarterback in the live game reps that you can have like this week in practice, and then it also hurts the rest of the offense. I mean, if you're running stuff with Davis Warren, but now that he did it on a Monday, the weight of having USC, have to prepare for him versus saying, Alex, you're our guy now, and we want to have this confidence in you. You're the starter. To me, it was a smart move. I thought that's why Sharon Moore did it. He understands. I don't know if somebody said, look, man, you got to pick a guy. I wish you would have said the same thing, whoever it was going to be. If he thought Greg Crippen or if he thought it was going to be Jadis, that he would have said, this is who we're going to go with. We're going to go with Greg Crippen. They were both pretty close. I wish he would have done that the game week against Fresno State, and he didn't. So he's played this out all the way to here. But I thought it was a confidence vote, and confidence is a huge thing, as I've been talking about for Alex Orji on Saturday, especially some early confidence. So he's got the whole week. He can feel good about it. He didn't have to feel like they were going to go in. What were they going to do? Compete again with Davis Warren having thrown all those picks? Were they going to go through yesterday and today not knowing who was going to be the starter and everybody wondering and everybody asking like, hey, who's it going to be and everything else? I think those couple days you're doing at least the best you can right now to form the offense around Alex Orji, come up with a game plan. Some of the things that we're talking about here, hey, rolling them out. What are those? Can we just script 8 plays out, and can we just run those back? And what of those are going to be included? Well, we'll say the 10 plays because I think they're going to run 8 or 9 of those along, with Alex Orji running, and they'll just have one pass. And whatever that's going to be, that first one is going to be to Samaj Morgan. Go ahead.
All right. Yeah. So you touched on this a little bit, but
yes.
Through your eyes, you tell me through your eyes, what are some of the things that maybe a casual fan's not going to notice, but you may in this USC game? Do you think? I mean, it sounds like one of the things you're talking about is uh, building confidence in the team offensively. We didn't talk about defense in a little while here. I don't know if the converse is true as well. I mean, will you be looking for? It doesn't sound like you're looking for that blitz rate, or maybe you're hoping the blitz rate goes down,
No.
but you're not expecting it. Maybe in the concept of complementary football, just not having turnovers will cause the average field position to be what might be normal for a defender, for a defense. Being able to defend a 70 or 80-yard field is a lot easier than, or a lot harder. I'm sorry, a lot easier than defending a 40-yard field or 30-yard field right after a turnover. Just some of the things that you are looking for in this USC game, both offense and defense, that you think maybe a casual fan might not notice?
Well, I think what will bode well for Michigan is if Sharon Moore, he picked his starter on Monday. I think if he picks whichever center, I don't think rotating a center this week is not a great idea either. So whoever it's going to be Jadi, it's going to be Crippen. And if you get to halftime, you might be a fan, and those guys will be sitting around saying, "Hey, Michigan has picked Greg Crippen," and that's been important. That they can have him with his quarterback all week long. He doesn't have to work with Jadi. He doesn't have to work with Crippen. So I would say all of these 3 games that we've watched, you would say, well, Sharon Moore, he rotates the center. He is rotating at different times, or at least putting a different quarterback in. In this case, it was Orji in spot plays. On defense, we saw a lot with an entire swap out of the secondary. I think you're going to go with, in this game, I wouldn't be surprised, and this is not a casual thing, but I would say that I was a little bit, I don't want to say hoodwinked, but I went into the hype a little bit on 2 guys on defense, and one is Jayshon Barham. He needs to really step up, and especially in this game, when you're thinking about his pass coverage and the kind of speed that he has, he needs to be the kind of, I thought he was going to be this wrecking ball and, maybe even an All-American. But I'll take, a solid performance by a Jayshon Barham. So I would say looking to see how the linebackers cover is going to be something that's important. And I would say Amir Hall, I wouldn't be surprised if he's going to be the starter. I got a little bit caught into the hype, but just listening to the coaches, they were talking about all of these different competitions at center, at quarterback, at running back, but they never said at cornerback 2. They just all loved Shug Hill. They kept saying, Jair Hill's the guy. And even the players out there, Hill. And Hill has been, from what I expected, because the coaches were talking about him so much, he's been a disappointment in that regard. And Hall, the transfer from Albany, he's looked pretty good. So I think I wouldn't be surprised if number 12 is going to be a start for Michigan on Saturday. And then I would be keeping an eye on the linebackers. I think that's going to be one of the keys. If Hausman and Barham, if you see those guys flying around and you see them tackling in space and being able to get back into pass coverage where they've struggled a little bit here, I think that's going to be some of the things that you're going to watch. And then sticking and stand with the center position as well.
All right. Really appreciate all your time here, Dennis. We're I do have a couple more questions, but we're most of the way through this. I wanted to have you again kind of introduce yourself, because I'll be chopping this up a little bit and I'll have different segments here. So if you could just kind of explain how people can reach you and where people can see you on YouTube.
Yeah, right now I work for the Maize and Blue Review. That's part of Rivals.com. I do a podcast 3 days a week, live at 2:00. And then I'm on after every Michigan football game and every Michigan basketball game. So this Saturday, after the Michigan USC game, it's over. and you're like, I can't get enough of Michigan football coverage, just go to the Maize and Blue Review, and I'll be on there. You mentioned Scar, that's Jim Scarcelli, a former Wolverine, who played for Bo back in the 80s. Gary Moeller was his defensive coordinator. He'll be on, and we'll talk about everything that we saw during the game. So after every Michigan game, and then 3 times a week, and then on here on a Tuesday with you so far, which has been exciting. So, and then I'm on Twitter at Dennis Fithian. I hang out. I don't know. I always get accused of taking long recesses on Twitter and then just having a flurry of them. And that's been kind of my MO over the, 13 years that I've been on Twitter. Some days and some weeks, man, you'll think, wow, has this guy ever stopped tweeting? And then you won't see me for, a month or so on there. So at Dennis Fithian on Twitter, and then the Maize and Blue Review. That's where I'm at right now.
All right. Appreciate it. While I have you for this podcast, I wanted to ask you, let's go to the next page, about recruiting. And, over the summer, we're so deep into recruiting. I'm just wondering if you have some information. I think probably might be top of mind, might be Babaloa. And if there are any other players that you may want to kind of mention at this point, maybe people who visited, should we be nervous about kind of the shaky start for Michigan in terms of recruits? Any thoughts with respect to recruiting that you could share would be appreciated.
Yeah, Andrew Babaloa is an offensive lineman that it looks like is down to Michigan and Stanford, but maybe Oklahoma. And I think it's always looked good for U of M. So when you're down to Stanford and Michigan and you're a football player, you do think that academics is going to be big for this guy. And if Stanford's got great academics, but on the football side, that's the way I look at it. And so I think Michigan's been in really good with Babaloa, and that's somebody that they're zeroing in on. The other ones that you're talking about, I think this is a big weekend. They're bringing in a lot of the guys that have committed. And one of them, and Andrew Olish, the tight end out of Pennsylvania, he committed, and now he's lining up 3 or 4 other visits, after he committed. That's never a good sign, but he's supposed to be in this week. So if they can get him in and say, look, what do you want? Or whatever, I don't know if that's what it's going to be. Like, what do you want? If it's going to be money or whatever else. But I think, of course, what you do when you're Sharon Moore and you're a first-time head coach, you're taking over for Jim Harbaugh, all these recruits are going to be watching this. And, Harbaugh was able to sell the transformational and we can win and, we can win a championship and do all this. It's changing. It changes from week to week now. It's changed rapidly over the last 3 years. I think Michigan's done a really good job navigating it, NIL, but it's adjustment period, I think, the most for Michigan fans. We've been told over the last, certainly 25 years that, Michigan's not buying players, and every time somebody would leave, you say, oh, that guy's just interested in the bag, or, oh, we don't want guys that are just chasing bags. You might. When I look at it like this, if you're a top 100 player, you have earned that money. So, and now it's, going into a top 150. So, all of these guys, most people, you, Farris, me, everybody that we know, we all mostly chase bags. So, to be like, oh, this guy's just out for the money. Yeah, he is. He's earned it. And so there needs to be a shift a little bit with the Michigan fans. And I don't know if Michigan needs to be, have stacks of cash in their hand. It is a big thing that if they can connect that, keep their traditional values or whatever they had in their and then be able to also get involved selectively, maybe with some guys that they're want to go after. I think they're going to have to do that. But if they kept winning, that's why this USC game is so big. Like, people are going to feel like Michigan's back on track. All of their goals are in front of them. They can still get to the college football playoff. Shame on everybody for saying this about Sharon Moore and the staff and the defense and Wink and everything else. Look at them now. Or if it goes the other way, you can say, hey, man, this thing is headed, this trajectory is headed one way, and there's going to be a lot of stuff popping up then about recruiting because everybody's going to be in these guys' ear, and then all of the fans are going to say, "Well, they've got to change their approach." So I don't know. We could spend 2 hours talking about recruiting and the philosophy and how they've gone about it, but I think this weekend I was looking at the list, and half of the guys that they have committed are coming in for this game. So obviously that's strategic. Let's keep them close. How are they feeling? We don't want you going anywhere else. What do we got to do? And then Olish, the tight end, is somebody that they really. I'm more. There's going to be some guys that pop up. There's probably going to be some guys that flip somewhere else, and Michigan's going to flip some other guys. But I'm zeroing in on being able to retain the guys that they have right now. And Olish is the one that at least has got a wandering eye right now. Is the one that I would keep an eye on if I was a Michigan fan.
Okay, so two quick follow-ups on this. So whether it's Olish or someone else, is it sort of like when you're buying a car and you've already made the commitment, kind of in your mind at least, but you haven't told the dealer yet. But then you do a little bit of due diligence and you go to another dealer or whatever, and you just try to say, okay, am I getting a good deal? Still going to buy the car from that dealer, but I just want to sort of double check. You think that there's a little bit of that where it's, yeah, he's committed, but he's just double checking that that the deal that's on the table is a fair one for him, and that's why maybe some players actually do shop around more after making a verbal commitment.
What I have found with the mind of a 17-year-old is that they can wake up one day and completely decide something else, that this is important to them. And whatever their family structure is, each one of these guys, I don't know what's important to them. I know that there have been, Michigan had a hockey player, John Madden, who's a tremendous player for him, shorthanded specialist. And I remember talking with him. I was like, what was it when it came down to Michigan? He said, I just love the maize and blue colors. I thought they really looked good. A lot of people say, "Oh, yeah, school," and then there was another hockey player. It was the Fab Five that did it for me. So who knows? When it comes down to the mind of a 17-year-old, yeah, and they've got guys that are texting them. I just think I try to put myself in position there and say, yeah, you're at Michigan, you really like what's going on, and then all of a sudden you see your DM and somebody slide in saying, we got 100 cash for you to just visit. Something like that. I mean, I don't know. Some of these schools are given 30,000 to just have you visit the school. So if I'm already committed and I love Michigan and everything else, and it pops up and I got a DM saying, we're just going to give you 3 stacks of cash when you come in, you'll just have it there. Your college coach is saying, look, somebody gave me 30,000. If you can just stop by and pick it up if you go visit. So it's changing up to the minute. We all have to hold our breath right up till signing day, and then the way you can hit the transfer portal, who knows? Guys can leave anywhere after that. Remember, the kid out of Belleville who was in Beasley, and then he goes through spring and he's gone. I mean, this roster management right now trying to get guys to stick and stay. I mean, who knows? It seems like it's money for most of them, but money. What I have watched over the years in the pros is that almost every guy goes for the biggest amount of money up front. That's what almost every free agent does. Now, ones that have accumulated tons of money, are they going in spots where, yeah, they can get money and they might take a little bit of a discount and they're looking for a winning situation? Sure. But none of these guys are in that situation that, they're sitting around. Maybe their parents have money, but none of these guys have been sitting around making, hundreds of thousands of dollars. And then somebody comes over the top with a couple extra 100,000. I mean, in some ways, you completely understand it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It still feels like the Wild West. We'll see what happens. We'll see what happens with the
capitalism.
22 or 23 million salary cap and directly paying players and all that kind of stuff.
But you see Tennessee today, they automatically are adding, was it 4 or 5% on all their ticket prices, and that money's earmarked for recruits. I mean, that's what they're doing. So they're taking the 4 or 5%, and that's going to their bankroll for recruits.
Yeah. It feels like the service charge you have when you go to a hotel or something. resort fee or something. Just bake it into the price. But maybe there's a strategic reason for it. That's interesting. Babaloa is truly a 5-star player, and if Michigan gets Babaloa, they're in the top 10, right? I mean, they're in the top 10 in recruiting, which hasn't happened for a little while here, right? Is that
well,
how
they've been
you're seeing
close. They've been hovering. I looked just recently over the last 5 years. They've averaged at 12. So a couple times they've been, I think, inside the top 10. This is from Rivals.com. This isn't a mean of all of them or anything. And so they had a couple wobbles outside 10, but right around 12. So if they can stay around there, the transfer portal, I know a lot of people like to say, well, recruiting's the backbone and the transfer portal is just like free agency. The transfer portal is as big. It seems like it's where you can go out and you're addressing immediate needs. So blending those two together, and Michigan the last 2 years has done a good job in the transfer portal and then blending it in with recruiting. So from that standpoint, that's why you like to see and you give them a little bit of leeway because you don't know all the things that are going on behind the scenes and how they're working it. And they've had the success on the field. So there's a lot of people that are just waiting for the team to drop a couple games so they can say, okay, you need to do this, you need to do that. But so we'll see.
Yeah. Well, while I have you here, I know you are a Lions fan, and I wanted to ask you about the Detroit Lions. Last question for me. A lot of crossover Michigan / Detroit Lions fans. Wondering what you think of really kind of a heartbreaking loss there. And what do you think about the season? Do you think that they are truly one of the best teams in the NFC, or is that kind of a question mark at this point? And what's it going to take for them to break through and get to the Super Bowl?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, I'm not discouraged about these first two games. I mean, Tampa Bay is a pretty good team. So, I mean, that's the one part that I take away from Sunday. But I look back to last year and Ben Johnson, their offensive coordinator, along with Dan Campbell, these guys, what they were really good at is when they got into the red zone, I think they were number 2 in the NFL last year in red zone touchdown percentage, 67% off the top of my head. And they're like in the 20s right now. You got to get in the red zone. You got to punch it in. If, they had the communication issues with all the guys out on the field, you can't have that. If you want to be a Super Bowl team, you got to button that stuff up. I think they can do that. I believe in Ben Johnson. I like him as an offensive coordinator. There's so many times during a game that I see something and I say, wow, man, I haven't seen it. I've been watching football for 50 years. Look at this guy. What a great offensive coordinator. But they got to scheme it up. The teams have been studying the Lions now that they're one of the hunted. And, they know that they get down to the red zone and they're going to their tight end. So teams are taking that away. So the Lions have to have a counter for that. And they can't have Jared Goff throwing the ball 55 times. I think it's a little bit like Michigan last. They got to get back to the best offensive line in football, and they've got 2 healthy running backs right now in Gibbs and Montgomery. Get to some smash mouth, and then that's going to help out Jared Goff. Where Jared Goff, he doesn't have to do too much. Just get back there, get some play action, get it out, get the ball out once you're establishing that run, and then score some touchdowns. And I just say, you called me a Lions fan, which is technically true. But I also have to say over the years that I've been someone that was so against ownership that I was a Lion fan, that I always watched all of the games. And I did the post game for the Lions Network for 10 years. And those are the Lion fans. I mean, it's not like with like Michigan, that side where I was you get into the real Lions fans and like my friends. I mean, these people are living and dying with the team. And I didn't do that a long time ago. I like them. I want them to win and everything else. I just don't put myself in a category as I guess you just say, a casual fan, as much casual fan as you could be. I want them to win. It's exciting. I watch all the games. I root for them that way. But I'm more of a casual Lions fan than I am because I don't think I could have. I don't think I would have made it if I would have lived and died with the Lions like all my friends. Some of my friends, just over the years, it's ruined their Sundays. I mean, they're mean to their wives, and I was like, come on. I had to step away from that a long time ago. Like in I don't know, was it in the early '80s? I stepped away from the big time fandom of the Lions.
Yeah. So 1957 through 2020. Well, last year, right? 2022, not including last year. They won one playoff game. They did win 2 playoff games last year, but that is just such a long stretch to be so
But they had
terrible.
a terrible owner, Farris. William Clay Ford was a terrible owner. But I don't like banging on him anymore, because like right now, with Sheila Hamp, what she has done, they have what you want in a franchise. They've got an owner. They've got a GM. Brad Holmes has been great as a general manager for the Lions and drafts and free agents. And Dan Campbell's pretty good himself. And then I would add Ben Johnson on that and Aaron Glenn with their coordinators. I mean, you start going down, this is what you need. I mean, quarterback is a big deal too. But if you've got the owner, if you've got the GM, you've got the coach, and you got the offensive, defensive coordinator, you are in a great spot. And the Lions have all of those things. Now, let's see them go out to Arizona, who looks pretty good on the road, and let's see them score some touchdowns in the red zone. They'll be back, and people feel pretty good about them.
Yeah. And one thing, at least after losing that Texas game, it was kind of a role reversal there. I'll kind of end with this: that usually it's Michigan that's winning, and over the years it's the Lions that's the disappointment. The Saturday to Sunday kind of transition there. But we had a bit of a role reversal that way. Hopefully both teams will win like they did last year, and we'll have a great for those crossover Michigan Lions fans. We'll have a great fall.
Oh, I know a lot. I know so many that not only have a couple of my friends season tickets for the Lions, and then season tickets for Michigan. So some of these weekends that these guys in the fall, you talk about their wives, man, being saints and everything else. I mean, these guys they leave Saturday morning. They don't come home till Sunday night. Man, these guys they're really living it up. And yeah, last year, I mean, it almost couldn't get. Now, yeah, we know how it could have been better. The Lions could have won 2 more games, but it was great being a Michigan and Detroit Lions fan last year. That's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, winning a playoff games felt like winning the Super Bowl, really.
Yeah.
But anyway, Dennis, really appreciate it. Thank you for spending the hour with me. I will post this entire video, or this video will get posted after this stream. I will also have segments of this that I'll post over the next several days. Really appreciate your support to the new channel here. Looking forward to interacting with you on your broadcasts as well, in terms of in the comment section.
Yeah, I love it. I love seeing smash the numbers up there, Farris. Good luck. You're getting involved in this, and you're jumping in with both feet. So I'm here to help, and however I can. So I'm looking forward to it. And covering Michigan, you made a good choice. I think great job and good luck.
Appreciate that. Thanks again, Dennis. Okay, bye-bye.